Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast. BrightWord is a leading platform for diverse storytelling, where voices from all backgrounds can share their unique narratives and connect with readers from around the world. Follow our regular podcast updates, where we strive to foster a literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Good afternoon, and welcome back to the BrightWord Books Podcast. I'm your host, John Lobb, and today we're thrilled to have a return visit from Mark Levy, author of What a Mess, Blackmail. Mark, thank you so much for joining us again. We're thrilled to have you back.
Thank you for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And as we were talking earlier, we're both based in the Northwest, so it's in some ways a small world.
I'm just not going to sing that. Sorry.
Exactly. No need to. So it's great to have you back. Since the release of the novel, how has the feedback been? What have you heard from readers?
It's been pretty good. I think one of my favorite stories is actually from my hairstylist. He had to go to Vegas for a wedding, and he took my book with her. And then another of his friends saw the book and, what's it about? And she took it, and then she monopolized it the entire time. He couldn't even finish the story on her because she took the book away from him on it. So I've been getting a lot of really good feedback on it.
Excellent. Excellent. And I know just from talking with other authors that females make up a good proportion of LGBTQ plus novels and even gay fiction. That
Mhm.
females are a big part of the audience in addition to males.
Correct. And so that's why the story, it's a bisexual dark romance thriller. So it's going to appeal to a lot of people.
Absolutely, that sounds intriguing. So I know the main character Jim is spent a lot of time with him, and in many ways he's an imperfect person. We learn at some point that he doesn't actually want to fix the situation he's found himself in.
hmm
Can you talk more about that? What makes Jim the way he is?
That's a great question, because a lot of the book, Jim is asking himself, why am I doing this? He knows how he got there. He started the affair and he got caught on it there. But then as the blackmail started progressing, and he was basically forced to do all of this to Matt. But as he kept doing more and more for Matt, he started doing more and more for his wife. And then he started doing more and more for work, but he didn't realize he was doing that. Before, Jim was very self-centered, and everything wrapped around him. But now with Matt, everything wrapped around Matt, especially Jim. And then from there, Jim's just started to change. Not a little, he changed a lot on it there. And it came to a head when his commanding officer, Major Ababi, sat down and asked him very specifically, is everything okay at home? And Jim is thinking like, how does he know this? And it's like, how much do I actually tell my major that, I'm being blackmailed by an 18-year-old kid? And so he needed more information. So he said, what do you mean, sir? And Major Babby just came out and just said, you're more personable, you're more relaxed, you're more friendly. You took the stick out of your ass. What's going
Interesting.
on it right there? And he's just saying, and then Jim's just saying, I'm just doing what I normally do. I'm having more fun on it. And it was at that point in time that he realized, I've changed more than I thought. And it's all because of the blackmail. And so that's kind of when he decided, if the blackmail can improve my life, what else can it do for me? And that's when he started to stop being scared and fighting it, but he started to slowly embrace it at that point in time.
Interesting. Interesting. And it seems as if a big part of the reason why he is so relatable is that all of us, the readers and all of us human beings are imperfect. We're all Jims in a way,
Mhm.
and that's perhaps what makes him so relatable.
Right. In fact, I in this particular book, I did not want there to be a villain. I just wanted to be people trapped by circumstances. And I think I was very successful in regards to that. And I wanted all of my characters, even Matt, the blackmailer, I wanted people to empathize with him too, because his situation isn't exactly rosy on it right there. And so the reason why Jim is so relatable is that people look at Jim and they think, there for the grace of God go I, right there. And then they get to see how Jim reacts to everything. And in the back of their head, they're thinking, well, how would I react to this? Would this be what I would do? Why is he doing this? And so it's a way of keeping the reader engaged with the characters too. And there's plenty of times where the readers will just kind of like hit themselves on the side of the head. It's like, why did you do that? Because it's not like there's a lot of situations where Jim will just do something, not because he's forced to, because he thinks he has to, which is vastly different in regards to there. Because again, Jim is a flawed person.
Absolutely, as we all are.
Mm-hmm.
As we all are. And the relationship between Jim and the mistress's son, pretty intense, and it seems to change over time. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship or that dynamic?
Yeah, well, it has to change over time because first of all, it's a story. You can't do the same thing over and over and over again. It gets boring and repetitive in regards to there. But the more the story progresses, the more Jim realizes that Matt is holding up this super dark mirror for Jim to look into. And Jim just does not like what he sees of himself. He sees how he's changed from when he first got married to where he is now. And it's just, it's like corruption in increments. Because if we all look back to who we were in our 20s and 30s, and now I'm much older than that now. I'm not sure how old you are. You may be in your 30s. I just don't know. But when you were younger, you're not the same person today that you were 10 or 15 years ago, let alone 2 or 3 decades ago. And Jim is fairly young. He's 35 years old, and he's been married for about 10 years on it. And he had to look back. He's like, how did I get here? Not how did I get here to be blackmailed, but how did I get into the situation that allowed me to be blackmailed? And that's where I think a lot of people will relate to Jim and his journey, because they can start to question the things they did in their life. How did I end up here? And they start to kind of like second guess with each other, or not with each other, but with themselves on what decisions did I make that ended me up here today?
Absolutely. Almost brings to mind the talking heads. This is not my beautiful life. How did I get here?
Correct. Correct.
Interesting. So a little bit of time has passed. Have any themes emerged or do you have thoughts like since the publication of the book, since you put the final word to paper, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and released it to the world, do you continue to learn from the book or do you continue to have additional revelations that you can share with us?
Yeah, the first major theme of the book is that actions have consequences, and this book is filled with it. But again, if I just kept the focus on Jim and I just kept the focus on Matt, that would be a very, very boring book. So then I had to start thinking about Jim's wife, Charlotte. And she has a rich background also in regards to there. We learn a secret from Charlotte in the book that she's in part responsible for everything that's going on. And that's explored more in the second book. We learn more about Matt's father, Paul. And Jim and Paul are like this. They were like instant besties from the moment they met each other when Paul transferred into the unit. And then we learn more about Lisa. Lisa is a championship trick shooter on center, but she's also an FBI agent, and Jim's wife is an FBI agent. So Jim, Charlotte, and Lisa are best friends too at work, and they're all neighbors in regards to there. But everyone has issues in their past that have affected this story and come to a head in the next story. Also,
Interesting.
nothing is surface level in this story.
Interesting, for sure. Well, we learned in our first discussion with you about your military background, and thank you for your service, by the way,
Thank you.
as well as your interest in the martial arts. And both military and martial arts strike me as disciplined endeavors, self-control, so to speak. Did that come into the novel at all? How did your military and martial arts background affect Jim and the rest of the book?
So both the military and the martial arts teach self-discipline and control on there. And as we know in the first book, Jim has issues with control when it comes to, how do I say this, certain parts of his anatomy. And so he thinks he's in control, but really he's one of the most easily manipulated people there is. At work, he's 100% focused. With his wife, he was 100% focused. But when it came to that, he was wrapped around pretty much anyone's fingers because he was kind of like a dog being led around on a leash in regards to there. And once that was kind of pointed out to him on there, that's when he started to kind of refocus a little also on, again, how did I get here? Why did I get here on there? When it comes to the martial arts, the second book has, you'd think with a military book, there'd be a lot of fighting that's going on. The fighting is all mental in the first book. In the second book, it's still mental, but now I've actually got fight scenes that are in there. And I've had some 3rd degree black belts, 6th degree black belts, and 5th degree black belts check out the way I wrote it to make sure I've got everything accurate on there. Those were some fun scenes to write on that too.
I'll bet.
So right now there's 2 scenes. When I get into the 3rd book, there's going to be a lot more scenes after that one too.
Excellent. Have the books changed you personally?
Sort of yeah, sort of no in regards there. To write a good book, you have to put yourself into the story. It doesn't matter whether the character is male or female, adult or young adult in there. There's still aspects of the author in regards there and the author's life experiences. So for me, part of it was a little bit cathartic writing writing the book in regards to there. Now, let me also be totally upfront with everyone. None of my background has anything to do with blackmail, especially blackmail for sex. Nothing. That's totally fiction. But the characters, when they relate to each other, it's those relatable stories, those relatable moments that come from my actual history to make the story more believable.
Interesting. Are there any current events, Mark, that you think relate particularly closely to the novel or to your writing?
There is actually. And the towards the end of the book, I already had this plot written out that the psychological operations department has to go to the border of Venezuela and Guyana because there's some human traffickers there, or there's something that's going on there. And later I develop into human traffickers. And after the book was initially published, that's when the war between Hamas and Israel started. And I thought, now here's an interesting twist. What if the human traffickers in the border of Venezuela and Guyana, what if their speciality is human trafficking of captured military personnel? And so I started to introduce that into this, at the end of the first book, and then in the second book is when I expanded that to be part of that, because it turns out that I call it the Romero Crime Syndicate, the RCS for short, in regards to there. And initially it was just that they're in town outside of the base. But as I wrote the second book, they've actually infiltrated the base and they haven't made their presence known, but their presence has been affected, if that makes sense on there. And that's where a lot of the subplots in the second book are going, which will come to a head in the third.
Interesting. Well, I know fans of the first book will be pleased about the second and the coming third book. And that actually got ahead of one of my questions I was going to ask you about. No worries. But the first book kind of didn't feel like the final ending.
No.
And in fact, it was for the second and the third book to follow.
Right. So I ended the first book. So when I was writing the book, how I do my writing is I want every chapter to be like its own individual story. So I picture it as a comic book series, just in book form in regards to there. And the best comic books, always the last page, dramatic reveal. And then you have to wait a month to see what that reveal is. So at the end of Blackmail, Lisa, his mistress, and Paul, his best friend, but Lisa's husband, and Matt's father bring Jim and Charlotte over because they have something to tell. And what they have to tell them is what is the emotional impact of the ending of Blackmail, but picks up immediately in Betrayal. And so it's going to hit you smack in the face, chapter 1 of Betrayal.
Wow. And I'm sure fans will be looking forward to that. It sounds very intriguing. It really does. Without giving too much away, Mark, will future writing explore similar moral themes? Where do you see or will the muse just take you where it would take you?
Well, definitely in the second book, it's definitely, again, kind of going along the lines of the moral themes in regards there, but more that secrets can kill on there. And the entire reason that I call it What a Mess Betrayal is because of all the secrets that everyone has been keeping and how it's affecting everyone around them on it right there. And how if you don't confront the secrets, if you don't confront your fears, how it can literally kill a person in regards to there. And that's why this in the second book, Betrayal, everything is always 100% told from Jim's perspective. But Matt's father, Paul, starts to take a little bit of, not a main course, what's the word I'm trying to say, spotlight in regards to what's going on there. And that was a lot of emotional, heavy writing that I did. After I was writing all these, I always had to take 2 or 3 days to decompress from it, because there was a lot going on that was going on with Paul. And so Paul ended up for a long time towards the end of the book being what everything started to rotate around.
And you mentioned about the writing being an emotional process, and all great writing, we would agree, does involve emotion and putting yourself into the book. It takes courage, I would imagine, to put that much of yourself into a novel and then send it out into the world. And you got it out there, and people can reply, they can give you a review, they can give you stars. Is that terrifying as a relatively new author, or rewarding, or both?
It's both on there, because, like I said, I put a lot of real world situations into my stories on there. Now, I've done nothing that I'm embarrassed about or ashamed about or anything like that. But at the same time, it's like when you post something on Facebook, do you want to read the comments? That is a little bit scary on there. But at the same time, it all came from me. How people interpret it is not my issue. And I have no problem ignoring the squeaky wheel, for lack of a better word, in regards there, because I've got more people that enjoy what I'm doing on there. But again,
Absolutely.
just like Jim, I've lived a flawed life also. I'm not perfect. I just try to learn from my mistakes.
Absolutely. And the fact that the novel was an award winner, you've got to feel good about that.
I think it took me a full week to stop patting my back because my elbow started to hurt a lot on it right there.
That's terrific. That's terrific. And I think that's so well deserved, and such a good harbinger for future success to come in your writing career.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I know when I get the second one published, I'm going to submit it to the same awards company, or the awards place that I did for Blackmail. So maybe I could have back to back, award winning books.
Terrific. So you're a second-time guest for us. You're a first-time novelist. What advice would you give either to yourself at the beginning, having gone through the process of producing a novel, or what if someone today is watching and they're thinking, I've got a novel in me, but I'm afraid, or I don't think I'm good enough. Any advice you can give, any encouragement you can give to people who have a book inside and they're at this point too afraid to let it out?
Confront your fears, let it out. It's there. If you're thinking about it, it's because it wants to come out. The only thing that's holding it back is you on there. And, even with my storyline, I deal with a lot of adult issues in regards to there, some of which may not be the most socially acceptable issues. So, but I had to confront those issues in a way that made it acceptable to the reader in regards to there. So the first thing is, if you think you have a story, write the story. That doesn't mean you sit down and you write the complete story in an hour. That will never happen. But here's what you have to do. You have to write something, anything, even if it's 3 sentences. Those will be the most important 3 sentences that you will write. Now you can go back and re-edit those 3 sentences. You can expand on those 3 sentences. But if you have a story and your fear is holding you back, you're holding yourself back. And if your fear is holding you back, and you want to write that story, and if it's holding you back because of the story, how is that fear also holding you back in other aspects of your life? If you have the story, start to write the story, because just as writing my story changed me, writing your story is going to change you, but it can only change you for the better, because you are now writing out, verbalizing something inside of you wants to come out. Unleash it. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it.
Intriguing indeed. And I would guess it could almost be cathartic. To your point, it's not just about allowing your words to be seen, but your feelings. And if you have this fear of letting your novel out, perhaps there's other things you're afraid of that if you could find the courage that really could change your life, not just as a novelist, but as a fellow human being.
And I can guarantee you, fellow novelist that is scared, that if you like your story, there's other people that will like your story too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'm so glad you were able to join us again. I know that all of us will be looking forward to seeing a lot more work from you in the future.
Well, thank you so much, John. I appreciate being here, and I look forward to speaking with you again too.
Absolutely. And for those out there who haven't yet gotten a copy, I'm assuming it's available on Amazon. Is that
Amazon
true?
and Barnes & Noble, and my publisher, BrightWord Press, at their website also.
Terrific. Well, we've been speaking with Mark Levy, and his novel is What a Mess, Blackmail. I encourage everyone to take a look and pick up a copy. It sounds like a really intriguing story, and you're sure to enjoy it. Mark, thank you again for being with us today.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you and your audience for having me on. Thank you so much, everybody.
You've been listening to the BrightWord Books Podcast, home of the literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss future episodes. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.